Welcome to episode 1178 of The Sleeper in the Bus. I'm Justin Mason, joined by Jason Collette, as always on Sundays. Jason, how you doing, my friend?
Doing well. I'm in my new Wander Franco Lumber Company shirt from RotoWare, and I got my Justin Mason sticker in the bag too. So thank you, Kenny. This shirt's awesome. The reminder to order it was when they tweeted out that the ALS shirt that they did got raised $57,120 for charity. I was like, oh, I need to order another shirt. Which one? Oh yeah, the Wander Franco shirt. I need that shirt, and so I now have it. How are you, bud?
I'm doing fantastic, especially because we have one of my favorite people in the world on the podcast. We have Sara Sanchez. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. It's lovely and sunny here in Chicago. And yesterday, the Cubs did like this dog day at Gallagher Way thing. So I was basically watching the Cubs get blown out on the big screen at Wrigley Field while I was hanging out with amazing dogs all over Gallagher Way. So, half of that was wonderful. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Remind everybody where you reach on social media and then plug all you do, because you got a brand new podcast that I just got to guest on.
Thank you so much for joining me for What the FAAB, and I appreciate it. You can find me on Twitter at BCB_Sara. I write about the Cubs at bleedcubbyblue.com. I've also got a column at Baseball HQ this season. I'm doing the Playing Time Tomorrow NL East look each week, so that comes out on Saturdays. And yeah, the new pod is called What the FAAB. It's part of the Fans First Sports Network, and we're doing just a weekly deep dive into different issues in fantasy baseball, breaking them down with some of the smartest people in the industry. I'm probably going to hit up Jason to see if he'll join us later this season as well. And it's been really fun so far. What?
You're having smart people on the podcast. So, I mean,
it's okay.
I'm down below the 50 feet of crap. Go ahead.
She makes exceptions because she had me on. So,
No, Justin, I really appreciated you joining us for that. It's been a lot of fun working through all of that so far and hosting that podcast. And I think I've got Brian Entrick and Casey Bubba on next week. So look forward to that too.
Casey Bubba's everywhere.
That'd be like his 80th podcast this year.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, we're in the 12-team mixed league tout wars together. And so we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into where that's going, what we're both looking for in that league. That's a fun league with some alternate categories and stuff.
Yeah, that is because what are the alternate categories? It's like innings pitched. I can't remember what the other ones are.
Innings pitched instead of wins, holds and saves instead of just saves, and then on base percentage instead of average.
See, I love that.
I do too.
I love that format.
It's my ideal setup, actually. It's the league I'm doing best in this year.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sara, for joining us. We're gonna jump in to a FAAB this week, but first, let's talk about some news and notes from around the league. Julio Urias hits the IL with a hamstring injury. Obviously, you're going to be reserving him in every format. Hopefully, he won't be out for too long. But that means Bobby Miller is going to come up and make his debut. Sara, what are your thoughts on Bobby Miller potentially joining this Dodgers rotation?
Yeah, Bobby Miller, and then we also have Gavin Stone coming up probably to replace Dustin May, who the Dodgers also lost to injury. With all things Dodgers and starting pitching, I just like the way the team manages their starting pitching. I think that they bring up guys and put them in situations to do well. They don't usually hang guys out to dry, so they're probably going to be helpful for your ratio categories at bare minimum. I am looking at both of those guys. I have a lot of Julio Urias. I have a lot of Dustin May. And so I'm looking for some replacements there for sure. And Bobby Miller is definitely on my waterfall in a handful of leagues.
Jason, what are your thoughts on Gavin Stone and Bobby Miller? I mean, you are kind of got to be the expert on starting pitching replacements, being a Rays fan at this point. So the Dodgers and the Rays, two best teams in Major League Baseball, struggling with pitching injuries right now.
It sucks. I do like Gavin Stone better in the short term. The thing with Bobby Miller is I was looking him up when I saw the news that he's coming up. He's worked 14 innings over 4 outings. So they've been very cautious with how they've used him so far. So even though he's coming up to make his major league debut on Tuesday, I don't expect it to be one, like if you're thinking right now, oh, hey, I can get the win. He hasn't gone more than 3 innings in any of these. So how do you expect him to go 5 at his major league debut? Of course, I could be wrong. Maybe he comes out and throws a no-hitter. But I'm not that interested in him right now with that. Gavin Stone's the guy that I like more just because I just love the changeup. It's such a nasty, nasty pitch for him. And so that's who I want now but Miller's definitely has the upside, but right now he's just getting into the action and they're limiting what he can do. So I'm not interested in him in the short term.
To be quite honest, I'm not really interested in either in the short term. Like I know these are top tier prospects for the Dodgers, and I think like everybody has gotten used to spending $200, $300 like each week in FAAB on pitching prospects coming up because it's just been an insane season. I think this is a good week to kind of pump the brakes a little bit, because while there are names that people are going to get excited about, and we're going to talk about a number of them in our FAAB section, like I don't know that any of them are really that game changing or have the role that they need to in order to be game changing for fantasy. And I think Bobby Miller and what Jason pointed out in terms of how many innings he's really thrown start to start down in the minors is kind of indicative of that. And so I think this is a good week to do those, $5, $10, $20 bids, as opposed to go crazy, unless there's something you absolutely have to have on the wire. But to me, I think it's a little bit of a quieter week after what feels like every week has just been an absolute nightmare in terms of throwing money around.
Yeah. Indeed it has. Although it was funny in a home league, in a 15-team home league, I was able to get Michael Kopech yesterday. And Matthew Boyd. I needed starting pitching, and I was able to get both of these guys because they had been cut by people that were like, I'm done. I can't do it. And Kopech really did look fantastic this week against Kansas City.
Screw Michael Kopech. Dude has just torched my ratios in just about every league. And I put him on my bench this week in every league, and he throws an absolute gem. And you know what's going to happen is I'm going to put him in my lineup versus the Guardians, who've been like the second worst team in baseball against right-handed pitching this year. And he's going to get torched again. Like, I know it's going to happen, but I'm going to do
Guardians
it anyway.
No home runs all year and watch. He's going to give up 5 to the Guardians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hate that guy. I just absolutely hate that guy.
That's what you get for putting your faith in the White Sox right now. And I'm not saying that as a Cubs fan. Like, it has been rough sledding over there on the south side of Chicago.
They're looking a little better lately. I mean, Joe Kelly looks lights out.
They couldn't look much worse.
They were all the way down at the bottom. And so, Joe Kelly has been pitching awesome. I think he's pitching himself into quite the trade piece, because Lord knows a lot of teams could use relief help raise. Anything goes.
I mean, the White Sox are the epitome of a fantasy baseball team, because at the end of the draft, on paper, you go, man, this team looks good. And then at the end of the year, you're like, what the hell happened? That team looked good at the beginning of the year. And for some reason, they just can't get it together. All right, let's move on to another injury. Jorge Polanco to the IL, the hamstring injury. Edouard Julien is being brought back up. He kind of struggled in his first go-around at the major leagues and was sent down once Polanco was ready for the start of the season. Jason, are you picking up Edouard Julien?
I don't know. They seem to want to give time. You got Kyle Farmer. You've had Willie Castro had a hell of a week for them. Picked up 3 steals just hanging out in the roster. I was talking to our buddy Ian Kahn this morning about he picked him up for $1 an AL labor and got 3 steals out of him this week. I could have used those 3 steals on my team. So I don't know if he's going to come up. Like you said, he had his moments when he came up the first time, but overall it was what you mostly get from these rookies. So this seems to be hamstring. Usually hamstring, you have to figure a month. So he could be up. I just don't know if he's going to get the everyday opportunity like he did the first time he came up.
What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, I agree with what Jason said. I'm interested a little bit. The walk rate has been great throughout the minors. He's an on-base guy. He's going to hit for a decent amount of average, and he can hit some home runs for you. But I just don't know how much run he's going to get if I don't. There are some guys who I'm a little bit more interested in at that, who are available this week at middle infielder, right? Like, I think I'm probably definitely more interested in a Matt McLain than I am in a Julien if I'm thinking about it from that perspective.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm thinking on base percentage leagues, he's pretty interesting because all he does is walk. I know he didn't really walk very much in his first major league stint, but dude has had like a 20% walk rate all throughout the minor leagues. So if you're in an on base percentage league and you need on base percentage, maybe he's worth a little bit of a gamble there. But the nice thing is, because he was bad in his first go around, he'll be really cheap in FAAB because everybody's going to look at those numbers and from his first go around. And a lot of guys struggle in that first go around, but this is a guy who's shown a really, really elite ability to take pitches and get on base. So if you're looking for that on base percentage and maybe some runs scored, it might be interesting, but I don't know. I don't know that he, in your standard formats, he's going to get enough playing time consistently, or, have a carrying tool in fantasy that makes a lot of sense. Gary Sanchez called up to the New York Mets, heading back to New York, just to the other team in New York. Sarah, any interest in Gary Sanchez?
Gary Sanchez could not get anyone to express any interest in him at all this offseason, and he really struggled in the World Baseball Classic. He's had some issues hitting and, just like really showing that power tool that he had with the Yankees when he first came up in the past few seasons. And yet, with the Mets in AAA, he was slashing 308, 514, 500. The Mets need offense, and they've just been running through catchers. It seems like they need the backup. They need the bat. I think Gary Sanchez is going to get a little bit of a run here, and you could do worse. There's not a lot out there in terms of catchers on the waiver wire.
Jason, any interest in Gary Sanchez?
I think here's my thing. I think, or I feel the Mets are interested in him because they really need him more behind the plate than at the plate. Their catchers. Everybody's running on that team. They have thrown out 7 of 44 stolen base attempts. And the other night, the Rays stole 7 bases off of Francisco Alvarez and whoever was on the mound. So it's like, I don't always want to blame the catcher. It is a pitcher catcher equation. So the pitchers deserve some of that blame. That said, 7 for 7 the Rays were against Alvarez. So they need, and Sanchez is at least good at that. So that's why I feel that he's up more so than the bat. Sarah mentioned he did well in Syracuse, but he did terrible in Sacramento when your Giants let him go. So it's like, who knows? But if he can show that he can control the running game more than anybody else has, then he may get more at bats. But that said, he's still going to hit down in the lineup. But the Mets have had a hell of a week with comeback wins, and Pete Alonso and Aaron Judge are just like, I'm hold my beer. I'm going to do it. No, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And both these guys have been doing what everybody wants them to do when they're not playing your favorite teams. So yeah.
Yeah, Sanchez, I think, is really interesting. Is C2 in deeper league. Obviously, your 10 and 12 team leagues, he's probably not viable. You could do worse since than Gary Sanchez. Mike Zunino has just been absolutely atrocious, and he's rostered in the vast majority of main event leagues for some reason. So I would be switching him out for Gary Sanchez. We know there's power in the bat. I think that the Mets are gonna play him. They brought him up to the major leagues because they didn't want him to opt out of his minor league contract, which was only 10 days long. So yeah, I think there's a chance that Sanchez could find some of that old glory a little bit, and at worst, you just stream him out if he's striking at a 30% rate and hitting 220. All right, Clint Frazier got called up by the White Sox. I don't know who put this on the sheet. So Jason, why do we care?
So he's actually been raking down here in Charlotte. And so there was a good article by James Fegan from The Athletic. They had talked to hitting coach Cam Seitzer here in Charlotte, talked about what some of the improvements that Frazier had made. If you have been a Clint Frazier fan, all 3 of you at this point who's left, he's kind of had that Giancarlo Stanton thing at the plate where his front leg is closed, and he usually has that toe tap. And even when I saw him play in person last week here in Charlotte, because Durham was in town, I wanted to go see, he still has that front toe up, but he's changed his leg where he's not closed anymore. And that's what the article Cam Seitzer pointed out. Yeah, he said, when you're closed like that, there's only one direction for you to go. linear, and you can really get jammed on inside stuff if you're closed like that unless you're opening up. So they've worked on his leg work, and his numbers in AAA here have just been outstanding with that. And so he's earned his promotion. You look at the White Sox, as Sarah mentioned, they've had their issues. And at worst case, Frazier ends up in a platoon situation out in right field with Gavin Sheets in that situation. But, Frazier has the pedigree. It's like every year we have somebody that comes out of nowhere and does something that we've written off. If these changes are for real and they can stick at the major league level and in that ballpark, perhaps there's something there. But I bring them up for AL only, folks. I'm not talking to you mixed leaguers. Forget it. But AL only, folks, it's worth it. I would say in Tout Wars, he's already on. Like Mike Podhorzer had him on a roster. I guess he took him when he was in the Rangers system during spring training or something, because I went to look this morning. I'm like, oh, wow, he's still sitting on somebody's team. So he has him there, or he picked him up a few weeks ago and took a 0 in that week. But so he's already rostered net. I would expect him to be bid on in labor tonight because there's a few teams hurting for power. Me too. And go from there. So that's why I put him there. And I probably should have put Greg Allen down there as well, only because the Yankees finally DFA'd Aaron Hicks. And Greg Allen's 23 for 23 in steals in AAA this year. So that's notable with that. So, bringing up these two names as people that for AL only folks to have action on tonight, because Hicks was playing, as Yankee fans can attest to, Hicks was playing more than anybody wanted him to, and so perhaps Allen can do that, but it at least gives them another weapon for stealing bases, as they have been very aggressive this season doing with Volpe and anybody else who's wanted to run. They've given him the chance, so Greg Allen could come up and be a nice source of steals, even though there's really nothing else there in his game.
Sarah, do you care about Clint Frazier or Greg Allen for that matter?
Post hype Clint Frazier. I mean, I was excited about Clint Frazier when the Cubs signed him last offseason, and I thought that he was going to give Ian Happ a little bit of a run for his money in left field. That did not happen. Ian Happ put up career numbers, and Clint Frazier / Jackson Frazier, he changed his name midway through the season and went back to Clint Frazier after that. Couldn't get much playing time there. I think I'm out on both of these guys at the moment, except in AL only situations, and definitely agree with Jason on that. I think there are some names that we're about to talk about who are as interesting that probably have more steady playing time coming their way.
Yeah, I agree. I for the most, I mean, outside of AL only, probably don't really care about these guys, and really in AL only, don't care that much about Frazier either. Just he's got to show me something at the major league level before I'm willing to even take the gamble on him. Greg Allen is a little bit more interested in really, really deep leagues because of that speed component, because he can be a game changer and he plays good defense. So that might get him into the lineup a little bit more often than I would expect with Frazier. All right, Tyler Glasnow is starting a rehab today. Sarah, are you excited?
Very excited because I am the girl who drafted Glasnow in a couple of NFBC leagues and have been staring at him on my bench for way too long right now. But the reason I'm excited about this is because Glasnow is one of a handful of pitchers sitting out there injured. Carlos Rodon is probably the other, who can really impact your starting rotation without costing you $250+ of your FAAB budget. And I am, for anybody who has been waiting for Glasnow to come back, waiting for Rodon to come back, I mean, these guys can impact your lineup just as much as if you had won the bidding on a Yuri Perez, or just as much, maybe more than if you had won the bidding on anybody except maybe Bryce Miller. So I'm very excited to see what Glasnow has. I hope that he's healthy, and I hope that he sticks in the Rays rotation for the rest of the season, because God knows I've got a couple of teams that really need those wins and strikeouts.
Jason, you got to be excited because
I got one team that really needs the services, and it's my real team, not my fantasy team. I actually don't have them anywhere in a league, but I have one team that really could really use the services with that. I just hope, just staring at it, Ian and I were talking about him earlier because Ian has them in XFL, and Ian and I are 1-2 in the XFL league. So it's like he already has a good pitching staff, and he's got Glasnow coming back. He's like, hey, could you let me know how he looks in rehab today? Because when when he got hurt, the rehab start was here in Charlotte, the one he left after one inning. And a friend of mine was there, and he's like, I saw him screaming in the dugout. I was like, oh, no. And so the last outing, he was out 4 innings. He went 4. So hopefully today it looks good, because that would put him on this will be his last one. He should be active this coming weekend against the Dodgers. Would be his first matchup. So that'll be right there. Baptism by fire. Come back up and get a lineup that's been putting a hurting on some teams there. So that'll be an interesting series. To watch. So I'm excited for him to get back. I know a lot of people have been waiting. Originally, when this happened, we did talk about like Mother's Day weekend, and if it wasn't for the setback, he may have made it right there. So it's going to be the end of the month. But if you remember, the early timeline was the beginning of May, and as we often preach on this podcast, never trust the first timeline. It's never right. So it ended up being close to the end of the month, but it's again the setback is what pushed it back a little bit. So. This is why I've always proselytized about adding that 2 to 3 weeks on the original timeline just to be safe.
Yeah, I need him back in Tout Wars. I still regret to this moment taking him, knowing that he was going to be out for a little while. But it'll be nice, a little bit of an addition. The Rays need him back more than any fantasy team does. I don't care how bad your fantasy team has been in pitching. I just be cautious with him early on. I don't know how aggressive the Rays are going to be in terms of letting him go. They may need to, because they probably need the innings from their starting pitchers. But he's a guy just can't stay healthy. Dude just can't stay on the mound, which is a problem. Hunter Gaddis is starting for the Guardians Monday, and I don't know why Jason put this on the sheet. So
I'll tell you why I put it on the sheet, because that's not how you spell Gavin Williams. That's why I put it on the sheet. There were a lot of people looking at it saying, ooh, this should be Gavin Williams. Gavin Williams is coming up. Well, Gavin Williams is not coming up. Hunter Gaddis is. You don't want any part of Hunter Gaddis. If you've been stashing Gavin Williams, you're like, I don't understand what Cleveland's doing here. We talked about they're already struggling, offensively. They're not hitting. Yeah, they're stealing bases. But that's about all they're doing. They've had problems with pitching. They've had problems at the back end of the bullpen. Clase has looked normal this year. Karinchak has been worse. And then they've got this great pitching prospect down there, and they're calling up Hunter Gaddis. And I know that we just, 2 weeks ago, before the Mother's Day break, we were talking about Cleveland brings these guys up. They trust. We should believe in Cleveland. But Gavin Williams is the guy that should be coming up, and the guy just keeps shoving down in the minors. And here we get Hunter Gaddis. So that's why I put it down there, because I know a lot of people were looking at it like this could be the week Gavin Williams. Well, it's not going to be Monday.
Well, yeah, but stash him if you can. Stash him right now, because I do think he's going to be up here pretty quickly. So, like I said, Gavin Williams is pitching really, really well down in AAA. So, I would expect him to be up at some point. The Guardians are finally moving their young guys up, and I think Gavin Williams is just going to be the next one. So, save your money on FAAB this week, so that way you can spend it on Gavin Williams next week or the week after when he is finally up. Jason, you put a couple tweets into the sheet that are really, really interesting. So I'm going to let you talk about those real quick.
Yeah, real quick, just on the stats. You folks will remember I was doing daily updates in March, April. Now it's more of a weekly look, just to see how the stats are holding up. And so, really, in May, what we're seeing so far in May compared to the first month using March, April, since it was 2 days of March, but the ball is starting to travel more. We're seeing a home run to fly ball rate went from 12.2 to 12.4. We're seeing that the barrels are up a bit from 5.5 to 5.7%. Stolen bases are settling down a little bit, 79% successful to 78% successful, and the attempts are down 1.5% from there. So we're starting. But the other piece of it is starting pitching is getting a little better this month. And I don't know if that is from using more openers, because in March, in the first month of the season, the ERA for starting pitching was 4.55, and this month it's 4.36. But relief has been flatline. But the difference with starting pitching is the BABIP went from 303 to 293. But the strikeout minus walk percentage from 14.1 to 13.5. So it's like they're not doing that much better in some skills, but the ERA has come down. And some of that gets down to teams are starting to get a little more comfortable with defensive positioning, because the BABIP on pulled and straightaway ground balls has come down from 217 to 227 to 219. and so you're seeing a little more positioning of what teams can get away with there. So that's happening. And then I've been looking at homers and net steals, and I added net homers. So net steals is looking at the amount of stolen bases a team generates offensively versus what they give up as defensively. And the best team in the league right now in that regard for net steals is Arizona. Arizona has thrown out 14 of 29 attempted stolen bases, and they are 37 of 44 themselves running that. So they have a net stolen base of 29. That's best in baseball. Conversely, the other end of that is the Dodgers. The Dodgers are 8 of 61 in throwing guys out, and they have stolen. They are 20 of 28 themselves, so they have a net of minus 33, and so that's the other end of that spectrum there. But on the home run side, I did the same thing with home runs. The Dodgers are a plus 22 on home runs, and that's not the best in the league. The best in the league is my team, who has given up allowed 48 fewer home runs than they've hit. The Rays have hit 90 home runs to lead all of baseball, and they've allowed 42. Next is Atlanta. Atlanta has hit 76 and allowed 38. So they're next. So I put both those tweets are up if you want to take a look at those charts and see how your favorite team is doing in that regard. Some of them are green, some of them are red, but you can take a look and see how some of those are doing. But I think for me, stolen base is the big thing this year, because that's why we're seeing more runners in scoring position. Hence, we're seeing the ERA higher. Again, I said earlier, the league starting pitcher ERA is for this month is 4.38. Last year we're cutting anybody that's over a 4, and this year it's like 4.20. That's not that high, pun intended. Sarah, it looks like you had something to say.
Oh, I just wanted to, this is great. I particularly love like the net stolen base, net home run information. I think that's really interesting. But one of the things that this jives with some research that I was just doing on the Cubs, looking at their stolen base game period, like when they're running and why and what types of situations. And the Cubs really look like a team right now that certain guys have green lights, and they've got, if you have a catcher behind the plate who has a pop time that is 2 seconds or higher, they are going to run on you. They ran so much against the Dodgers earlier this season. The vast majority of the stolen bases that the Cubs have this season came against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, admittedly, that was when Will Smith was on the concussion IL, but I just, teams are running against the Dodgers, and I think you can kind of stream stolen bases against them, particularly with a dude like Syndergaard on the mound.
Oh yeah, you get absolutely any catcher plus Syndergaard, and it's there. Like, and Christian Javier is another guy with Houston. It doesn't matter who's there; he's struggling to do the same thing as well. I mean, the Dodgers. Nobody else. When I'm looking at the chart that I've put together, no other team has allowed more than 48 stolen base. Is yes. So the White Sox they've had 48 bases stolen against them, and they've caught 10. The Dodgers have had 61 bases stolen against them, and they've caught 8. So that is the biggest. Nobody else is over that. So like everybody is. People will remember that series against the Pirates, where the Pirates were running all over the Dodgers. And G1 Bay had a bunch of steals, but I think they had 12 steals over the 3-game series. I'm excited to see what my team can do against the Dodgers this weekend if they get on base, because they do like to run, and they will. They just stole 7 against Francisco Alvarez earlier this week in that stupid loss. So yeah.
All right, let's jump into some Sunday FAAB. I think the big name this week is Matthew Liberatore, who came up and looked pretty good in his season debut. Liberatore has struggled since becoming like a top tier pitching prospect in the minors, and then in a brief call up last season in the majors. But he's added some velocity, looks like a different pitcher. Sarah, any interest in Matthew Liberatore this week?
I have interest in Matthew Liberatore, but I don't think I am going to get him anywhere, because my interest is capped and the market for starting pitching has been ridiculous. We have a handful of names here that we're going to run through, and there's a theme that I noticed with all of them, which is that all of these guys walk too many batters. It's almost like the elite starting pitcher prospects have already been called up, and the dudes who have some walk issues and some command issues, that is the tier of pitchers that we are getting right now. And I just have a hunch that the FAAB market is not going to recognize that distinction. And these guys are still going to go for 190, 200, because people need those innings and they're looking for those wins. And you're going to get guys who walk a ton more guys. So with Matthew Liberatore, the last time he came through the league, he was walking 11.2% of the batters he faced. He got that down to 9.2% in AAA this time around. The K's look good. I can't imagine that I am going to put down enough FAAB to get Liberatore anywhere. I do have him as a $1 auto new dude in our podcasters auto new league, and I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, $1. That's not bad, but yeah, I think he's gonna go for 100, 200 bucks this week in FAAB. I'm just not willing to do that, especially because I don't really trust the Cardinals, and that's not something I'm normally saying, in a regular season. But they have just been really, really weird this year. There's talking about that they may pitch him out of the bullpen today, which means while he will get a start sometime next week, we don't know when it is and who it's going to be against. Yeah, I'm not super interested unless I can get him for cheaply. And like you said, I just don't think that's going to happen. Jason, any interest in Liberatore for you?
So folks may not remember, he's the guy that the Rays traded to get Randy Arozarena. That was the big thing. And for the big difference in Liberatore this year has been a fastball. And when I say a fastball, it really didn't have much of one. The velocity wasn't there. He's added more strength. There was a good article in MLB this week that talked about he was eating like 4,300 calories a day to try to build up the strength so he wasn't wearing down in the season. But he's now throwing a fastball in the mid to upper 90s where he was sitting low 90s. I mean, he's always had a great curveball, always had it. But the fastball wasn't there. And so I remember we were talking about him at First Pitch Florida and just talking through some things. And people were like, what's happened? This guy was supposed to be good, but nothing's there. And then he is surprised with the fastball velocity. And that's been the big difference for him. It used to be spit on the curveball. Yeah, it was a great pitch, but try to avoid it and make him come into the strike zone with the fastball and jump on that. And now that he's got velocity, he can come with the fastball. And it's not the kind of pitch you want to sit out there and hunt. So I'm with you in that I'm not going to be dropping $200 bids. Mainly because I've been aggressive in free agent process throughout the year. And so I'm already like over halfway burnt in a lot of my stuff. And so I don't want to go out and be like, hey, here, not to mention, St. Louis isn't a great team right now. And so where are you going to be? Yeah, I may get some strikeouts. I may have some decent ratios, but I'm tired of no decisions. I need to get wins. And so this isn't the kind of thing I want to settle for. I want to see what I can do. What else may be coming up? That's the other issue Sarah alluded to is like, we've already seen the first wave. This is the next wave. I don't know if there's another wave. Pitching machines may have to be it. I keep making that joke, but if we don't see injuries go down, we may have coach pitch. So I don't know but if you're sitting on money, this is the type of guy that you need to do. But if you're, like me, you've been aggressive. I don't know if you want to, you can budget your way the rest of the year, but if you're sitting on a lot of money, you're running out of, and you're hurting in pitching, you are running out of options to spend that money on.
I will say the Cardinals have been much better as of late. I mean, they've really started to dig themselves out of the hole they put themselves in. And luckily for the Cardinals, no other team in the Central has really kind of differentiated themselves from the rest of the pack. So, somehow they're, sitting only about 4 or 5 games back from that division lead at this point, which is pretty amazing considering how awful they started the season. Next guy on the list is Brandon Williamson, another NL Central pitcher. Williamson is another former top prospect that really struggled with command and control and kind of lost a lot of that prospect shine. Jason, any interest in him? He just threw a gem in Colorado.
I remember reading some things like, oh, we're calling up Brandon Williamson. Oh, we're putting him in Colorado. Oh man, why are you doing that to the guy? And hey, look at that. He was one of the, or maybe the centerpiece in the Luis Castillo trade for him. I do have him in an 18-team keeper league. I drafted him in the minor league phase last year, and he was the only pitching prospect I kept. So I do like him. I just don't like that he has to pitch for Cincinnati. And he got away with it, and he got away with it in Colorado. But it's, Cincy, it's going to get warm, and I don't like where he has to pitch for that. But I did keep him. So it's like in an 18-team league. There's your context. I would have been, I kept him in that format. In a 15-team, I'm going to let somebody else be the bigger spender. And that's where I cut it off. I don't have any interest in a 12-team mixed. And then if we get to NL only, I don't know if you have to. You're running out of options. So you can take a chance to see where things go, but just understand that you may have missed. He didn't even get a win in that outing with that. So it was a no decision there to that point. But he does have talent in the pedigree, and he's not he's 25, so he's not a young kid. He just turned 25 in April 2nd when I look over here.
He's got a 2-start week versus St. Louis and Sarah's Chicago Cubs. Any interest in Brandon Williamson, Sarah?
I think the Cardinals and the Cubs both have pretty hot offenses right now, and I am not interested in seeing what Brandon Williamson does against either of those offenses. Part of the problem here, and Jason nailed it, like the team context is just not great. Great American Ballpark is not a great place to pitch. The Reds are not particularly adept at developing pitching. I mean, if you go look at his minor league numbers, his K-BB rate has basically collapsed from his time with the Mariners to his time with the Reds, and that walk rate is in double digits. You can't walk guys like that at Great American Ballpark and expect to do wonderful things. So I'm probably out on Williamson. I imagine he's going to go for a pretty penny in FAAB, and I'll put maybe $24, $36, something like that on there, and I won't get him.
That's out of 1,000, yes?
Out of 1,000, yes. This is not out of 100. Yeah, sorry, I'm talking NFBC.
Sure the people in $100
NFBC FAAB budgets. No, I'm not in any of the old school $100 FAAB budget leagues.
And here's the thing: they're going up against, or he's going up against the Cardinals and the Cubs this week. One at home, one in Chicago versus the Cubs. And what do both of those teams do aside from being really hot right now? They murder left-handed pitching. Like they murder left-handed pitching. And this is a guy who he's got really good stuff and rarely can command and control it. I know the first start was good. It was especially good being in Colorado, but no thanks. I just, even if I put some bids on him, there's no way I'm starting him this week. So if you're in a position where it's like, oh, when I pick up a guy, I've got to start him, then no, don't bid on Brandon Williams.
This isn't the week to do that.
Next guy on the list, moving away from the starting pitchers, Jared Walsh is going to be coming back here. He has been on the IL with headaches. It seems like he's doing better and that he's going to get back in this potent Angels offense. Any interest in Jared Walsh, Sarah?
Yeah, I do have some interest in Jared Walsh, particularly if you need a corner bat. He's got some power. He's projected for about 280 to 330 additional plate appearances this season, depending on which projection system you're using, with double-digit home runs out of those. It is interesting, though, and it's hard to see what his return is going to look like. I think with injuries, we oftentimes look for comparisons with other people who had that injury, right? So you're like, oh, this is what it means to come back from Tommy John if you're a position player. This is what it means to come back from Tommy John if you're a pitcher. And this is such a weird injury in terms of the headaches and insomnia issues and some of the neurological issues that Walsh was dealing with, that I think it's really difficult to predict what that is going to look like. So I would urge some caution there, but I do think that he is worth it if you need power and you have a corner and field spot open.
What about you, Jason?
Yeah, if you were carrying Jake Lamb, those types of things in a shallow league, I honestly don't have interest in Jared Walsh unless it's the deepest of mixed leagues. He does not hit lefties. He's going to be in a platoon situation there, even in that good lineup. So to me, it's an AL only option with him. And so, he struggled. He struggled last year. He did have the big year in 21, but last year just really wasn't good. Even against righties, he hit 220. And so, like I said, we don't have a good baseline, as Sarah said. We don't have a good baseline of what he can potentially come back from. He is in a good situation, but there's no way he's going to hit any higher than 6 in that lineup. I don't see anybody in front of him moving within that lineup. So if those guys get on base, he has the opportunities for some RBI damages as long as it's against righties. But again, he's going to be limited in his playing time because of his inability to hit lefties.
Yeah, I don't know how interested I am. I mean, on top of not having a good baseline for guys coming back from, migraines and insomnia, he also had thoracic outlet surgery in the offseason. And there's no real data on that for hitters. We have data on it for pitchers. It's not usually very good for pitchers, but we don't really know what it does for hitters because there hasn't been that many guys who've come back from it as hitters. So I mean, outside of really, really deep kind of $1 gambles, I just don't know that I'm that interested in Jared Walsh. What about Jake Burger, though, who has been just absolutely tearing the cover off the ball? And this is a former top-tier prospect. He was a first-round pick that just had his entire career early on derailed by just really, really bad injuries. Healthy now, he looks like he's playing full-time or pretty close to full-time in Chicago for the White Sox. Jason, any interest in Jake Burger?
Yeah, I love Rick Berger. I got to see him a bunch here in Charlotte. He was here often during rehab or before in between the injuries. The guy can hit. He can flat out hit. He doesn't look like a baseball, but he looks like Lance Lynn with a bat. But he can flat out hit, and the DH is a perfect spot for him. And he's had the opportunity. I was looking, the White Sox have had him all over the lineup, depending on things. He's hit anywhere from second, where he's hitting today. He hit 8th earlier this week, and both of those were against right-handed pitchers. So he hit 8th on this Tuesday and Wednesday, and he's hitting second today. He hit 6th. He hit cleanup against the lefty. So they use him all over the place. The good news is he's hitting every day. The bad news is it's like, where are we going to put him? They keep trying to move him around, but the guy just rakes. You look at the numbers, and he's getting killed on changeups. The off-speed stuff, league's killing him, but he's hitting 351 with an expected batting average of 341 on fastballs. 333 when they expected a 343 against breaking balls. So he's getting that done. It's the off-speed stuff that's been hurting him, but he does go up there hunting for fastballs with that. And I've always been impressed with his ability to hit the baseball hard. Saw it a bunch here live in Charlotte. And I'm carrying him in 2 leagues because I took him in the reserves earlier this, in the offseason. And it's paying out. And again, pedigree-wise, a first-round pick from 2017. That's how long these injuries have been bothering him. First-rounder from 2017. But yeah, if he's somehow still out there on the free agent pile and you're hurting for power, like this is a priority for you.
For those who don't know his history, he tore his Achilles, and then once he rehabbed back from it, he tore the other one. And so, I mean, just unbelievably unlucky in terms of just, that's not usually a baseball injury that we're dealing with very often. It's more of a football thing. But for him to make his way back and be productive is really impressive. Sarah, any interest in Burger?
I really like Jake Burger. I agree with everything that Jason said. I've gotten to watch him a bunch here out in Chicago, and I've gone down to the South Side to watch the White Sox. And I think the only concern is playing time when Eloy Jimenez comes back, but Eloy Jimenez gets hurt all the time. So Jake Burger is a perfect guy to slot into there when Eloy is on the injured list for whatever random thing is going to impact Eloy later in the season. He looks like he's got as much power potential as Walsh does, and fewer plate appearances. And I think those plate appearances are going to go up just because the White Sox have a hard time staying on the field. So yes, I absolutely love Jake Burger.
Not to mention, like, at what point do the White Sox just say, like, Yoan Moncada is just not a thing anymore? Like, and the White Sox have made comments about Burger, like, staying in the lineup once everybody gets back, just because he deserves it. So, I'm a huge Burger fan. My only regret with him is that I dropped him when he went on the IL a few weeks back. Just because I couldn't hold him on my rosters, and I could really use Jake Burger on a couple teams right now.
I was trying to think, like, with Moncada, fair point, but let's not forget they have got to pay him guaranteed through next season, and then there's a club option in 2025. I was wondering, like, is Moncada at second base purely a dead option, but he hasn't played there since 2018? Because
Burger's played more second base than Moncada.
Burger looked good at third base from the games I watched him play. I mean, it's not the prettiest throwing motion, but it works. And like I said, he hits, and they're clearly trying to find a way to keep him in the lineup. Sarah brings a fair point up with once Jimenez comes off the IL, where do you keep Burger? But they got to keep him somewhere. I mean, the offense needs him because they have all these other issues in that lineup. Grandal's not getting it done again this year, and they need power. Last time I looked, the three of us have one fewer home run than Tim Anderson does in his last 400 plate appearances.
Mm-hmm.
The three of us. So we got that going for us, which is nice.
And keep the Eloy, thoughts kind of in your mind, because there was a report yesterday that said Eloy is ahead of schedule returning back from his appendectomy. So it sounds like he might be here in the next week or two. moving right along, we have Matt McLain, who Sarah mentioned earlier as a guy that might be interesting to pick up as Hunter Green gives up yet another home run to Cincinnati, or sorry, to the Yankees in Cincinnati. Sarah, what are your thoughts on Matt McLain? Is he a guy that you're interested in picking up right now?
I think Matt McLain is the guy to focus on in FAAB this week. I think he's going to go for about the same amount of money that Christopher Morel went for in leagues last year. And I think that I would rather spend that money on Matt McLain than on Christopher Morel, just because I have playing time concerns with Christopher Morel. I have watched the Cubs choose to start Miles Mastroboni or Nick Madrigal ahead of Christopher Morel for #reasons for like almost a full season now. And so I don't think that's going to happen with Matt McLain. I think that Matt McLain is going to get a bunch of run on a Reds team where they need to see what they have there. I think he's got double-digit steals projections from almost every system, and he's had a good start so far. He's hitting 267, 389, 400. Middle infielder has been a hard place to get guys that you can just plug in and watch them go. And I have a lot of interest in Matt McLain. So if I was in a league and I really needed steals, I really needed a guy who could hit for average, and I missed out on Christopher Morel last week, I think Matt McLain is the dude for you. And I think that you need to look at the bidding that went for Christopher Morel and plug that number in for Matt McLain.
Jason?
Agree with her because, Morel, he actually, his performance this week has absolutely justified the numbers people were paying last week. I tried and I got shut out on Morel, and I was rather aggressive, and I tried. I will try to do the same with McLain in my home, my 15 team OBP league. He went $221, I think, last night. We do ours on Saturday night, but he went $221 last night. There were multiple big bids in on him. But, he was having an impressive year down in AAA. For folks who didn't see what his numbers were down there, he was triple slashing 348, 474. That's his on base, not his slugging. 474 on base and 710 slug with 10 steals down there and 12 home runs. It's been like, what took so long to get him up here with that? But he has been, you've looked at his stolen bases since the start of last season, 37 of 45 in stolen bases. Now, last year he struggled, contact was a big problem last year, striking out 28% of the time, but he's down to 20% of the time, making the jump from AA to AAA, which we don't normally see. We normally see that go the other direction, but he was doing better this year. So he should be up to stay. Lord knows Cincinnati could use that. I think a lot of us are taking the big L on Will Myers going to Cincinnati. Like, hey, that's going to be a great thing. Will Myers has sucked. It sucked. I just traded him in XFL. I was just like, I'm done. I can't take it anymore. Let him, if he can succeed, let somebody else have him. So he should be up to stay. And I would agree with Sarah. This should be the top dollar guy for FAAB this weekend.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. The only thing I'm a little bit concerned by and interested to see is, are they going to use him against left-handed pitching? Now, he is a righty, so you would think, oh, of course they're going to use him against left-handed pitching. But the one game he didn't play this week was against the lefty. It was their only lefty they faced. They go up against 3 lefties in their first 4 games against the Cardinals this week. So is this a matter of they want to get Kevin Newman in against lefties for some odd reason? I don't know, but it is something to kind of keep an eye on and monitor. I don't know what they're doing, but if they say, well, we want to get Kevin Newman in against lefties, then Matt McLain becomes, for some reason, a weird strong side platoon player. And that becomes a little bit less interesting. My hope is that he is the full-time player. Maybe that was just an aberration.
It's a fair point because he has hit second every game this week against the righty, and then he sits against lefty.
Yep.
And they use Jose Barrero at shortstop the one day. So it is something to watch this week. But it's like, I guess that's the tax you pay for picking them up this week, is you may have to take a light week of stats if they have 3 lefties this week. But it's a long-term play. This isn't just a 1-week thing. I mean, this is a long-term play. Hopefully you're picking up somebody here that you can just use the rest of the season, because there's just not a lot of left-handed pitching that's happening out there right now. And, heck, my team went almost a month between facing left-handed starters. They went from Nick Lodolo. They faced 3 lefties in the last 35 days.
Well, there's not a lot of left-handed pitching in the NL Central, period. It's one of those divisions that just doesn't have a ton. of lefties in it. And also, like, I agree with you that it's definitely something to keep an eye on, that he's already sat against a lefty and we should watch it. And also, like, nobody needs to see more of Kevin Newman. Like, come on, Cincinnati, just let us watch the kids play.
But I think this is also something to keep in mind because TJ Friedel's going to be back soon. And when that happens, then Jose Barrero can't play center anymore. And so they're going to need to send someone down. They probably should send down either Kevin Newman or Jose Barrero, but the Reds are a weird organization that does weird things. We really thought at this point, especially with how well they're hitting, that Encarnacion Strand and Elliot La Cruz would be up. So they're not even up yet. So I would be aggressive too on Matt McLain because I do think he's going to be a pretty interesting player, especially if he continues to hit second in that lineup. But I definitely want to kind of express those caveats that there are some playing time concerns that I don't think that I got some pushback from in a couple of my articles, but there could be playing time concerns down the road, and we want to kind of point those out when we do potentially see them. Next guy on the list is Paul DeJong, old friend of the show, Paul DeJong, who has been really, really good in St. Louis since getting called up. Jason, what are your thoughts on Paul DeJong?
He has played himself into an everyday role. I mean, early on, it was just lefties. He was short side platooning, but he has been in the lineup every single day this week, hitting anywhere from 5th to 8th and hitting 7th the last 4 days. So with a better performing offense and the fact he's in there every day, my interest in him certainly has moved up from where it was. I believe we talked about him a few weeks ago, and the concern was, he just wasn't in there every day. He was only facing the lefties. But now that he's in there every day, I'm back in, especially the same theme we've used. If I'm hurting for power, he's somebody that we can look at. We did talk about, was it this? When did he work on? He worked on the swing change this winter, yes? Or was that was? Thank you, Sarah. I remember he worked.
He's done it every year.
Every year, but there was a big thing where he was working this year, and so he's already equaled his home run total from last year in about a third of the playing time. He had 6 home runs and 237 PA last year. He's got 6 and 84. It almost works out perfectly to a third. So maybe we're starting to see the fruits of that labor pay off in that regard for him. But again, the fact that he's in there every day now, and he's somebody that has shown power upside, even outside of the bouncy ball. Yeah, the 30 came in 2019, but he did have 19 in not even full-time duty just 2 seasons ago. So, yes, I have more interest in it. His story has definitely changed.
Sarah, any interest in Paul DeJong?
Do have interest in Paul DeJong, and I think he's not going to cost you anywhere near as much as Matt McLain is for a ton of homers. The hard hit rate is back for Paul DeJong, and it's better than ever. It's up to 48.1% this season compared to 37.6% last season, 35.3% the season before that. He is hitting 406 against fastballs right now, and he was hitting 183 against fastballs a year ago. Now, at some point, he is going to stop seeing as many fastballs, and he's not doing the same amount of damage on breaking or off-speed stuff so far this season. He's hitting 161 versus breaking stuff and 167 versus off-speed stuff this season. But for right now, I think you just write it. He's hunting fastballs and he's doing damage on them.
Yeah, I mean, I want to believe that this is him becoming a thing again. I'm really, really skeptical of it. On the plus side, the zone contact is up to almost league average. He's not swinging outside the zone as much. Swinging strike rate is down a little bit. But it's not like he is making elite zone contact or even great zone contact. It's not like swing strike rate is down a ton. It still is around 14%. And he's still striking out at a 27% rate. Like, this feels like the same Paul DeJong who just is going through a little bit of a hot streak. And that'll probably cool off at some point and he'll go back to being a bench player. But if you want to stream it for while it's here, I got no problem with that. Cardinals are playing better right now. He's playing every day. It makes a lot of sense. But I don't think that this is a long-term solution for your fantasy team because I think Paul DeJong's probably going to go back to just being Paul DeJong, which hurts me as a longtime fan. Jazz Chisholm went on the IL, so we got to talk about potential replacements because also Jesus Sanchez went on the IL for the Marlins. So I put Peyton Burdick on the rundown, and then Sarah added Xavier Edwards. So Sarah, give me your thoughts on these two guys. Who are you interested in?
Well, so they're both very different players, right? Like Peyton Burdick is a power guy. He's got a crazy high K percentage. He struck out like 40% of the time, 38.9% of the time in AAA this season. And he'll get some run while Sanchez is on the IL because he has some power. It is a bummer, by the way, that Sanchez hit the IL when he did, because he was really just starting to find his stride again. And he was doing some serious damage. But actually a little bit more interested in Edwards, because Edwards is the same type of dude. The Marlins have like 15 of these guys, I swear to God. Second baseman playing the outfield. He can run and he will get on base, and he will run, and he can get some steals for you. I think he's got the potential to go on one of those burners for steals, kind of like what Jon Berti did last year. And he's going to get some playing time, I think, because the Marlins right now are running Garrett Hampson out in center field most days. Garrett Hampson is not doing much to deserve that playing time. They've already soured on him a couple of times before. And I think all it's going to take is a game or two for Edwards to get on base, steal some bags, and he will take that spot.
What do you think, Jason?
So some of you listening may be like, who the hell is Xavier Edwards? You may know him as Slapdick Prospect. That's who Xavier Edwards. That's the guy Blake Snell called Slapdick Prospect. And I agree with Sarah. He's a guy that can run. He gets on base. He can run. He, of these two, would be the guy that I would be more interested in, because as Sarah said, Peyton Burdick has struck out 41% of the time in organized baseball this season. 41% of the time. The burn rate, it could go quickly for him, but Edwards knows how to get on base, has got much better plate discipline, and has got that skill that the Marlins like to harvest. If you'll remember, the GM was like, I want to get players that make contact and run, and Burdick can run, but he doesn't make any contact. So if Edwards can play, he came up as a second base, he was moving to the outfield, so he's got that flexibility and could fit into that Chisholm type of role. So that's the guy I want to prioritize. Let somebody else try to chase lightning in a bottle with Burdick, who was hitting well in AAA numbers-wise. But again, the strikeouts, just yikes. And it's been a problem all throughout his career. Whereas Edwards, that speed is a skill that can carry him, as the Marlins have been fans of that type of thing. So, yeah, that's the direction I want to move in.
Yeah, I think you guys absolutely nailed it. If you're looking for maybe some cheap power and maybe like a hot streak, I believe the Marlins are heading to Colorado this week. So that's always just a nice little stream.
Wait, Colorado at home all week, 7 games all week.
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
Get your Colorado hitters in your lineup, because it's going to be a fun week in Colorado. But I don't know that either of these guys are going to make a huge impact necessarily in fantasy, but something we should definitely be monitoring, especially with them going to Colorado. Oscar Mercado came up because the Cardinals are running out of outfielders, especially ones who can play center field, and stole a bunch of bases. Any interest, Sarah?
I have a little bit of interest just because the Cardinals offense is interesting right now. We knew it wasn't going to be as bad as they started in April through the entire season, and they appear to be on quite a hot streak at the moment. Mercado was slashing 278, 361, 421, and 145 plate appearances in AAA this season, and he's doing great for St. Louis so far. I just would temper the bids a little bit because I'm not sure how many plate appearances there are here with the Cardinals once people are healthy. They're already trying to find playing time for Burleson and Donovan, Nootbaar, and Yepes. And then they've got Tyler O'Neill, who they're trying to, I don't know what they're trying to do with Tyler O'Neill when he comes back, probably trying to trade him or something. I just think that it's a crowded situation in the outfield in St. Louis. There's a reason Jordan Walker got sent down. And I think that Mercado is here for a while. You can ride the hot streak if you want, but he's a streamer.
What do you think, Jason?
I forgot he was in the league. I'm not going to. I did. I saw him come up.
I did too. And then all of a sudden I'm doing the roto write-up one night and I'm looking through like stat lines and I go, Oscar Mercado stole 2 bases? What the hell? I didn't like you said, I didn't even know he was
he's 17. He's 17 of 20 this year in stolen bases. He was 15 of 18 down in Memphis, and then now he's 2 for 2 at the major league level. But Sarah brings up a great point with the crowded depth chart, and it seems like St. Louis always has this problem where they always have too many guys in the outfield. Like what? And this is why they end up trading Pham and Arozarena, and I'm drawing a blank. It's like
Adolis Garcia.
Yes, Adolis Garcia. Thank you. I knew there was an obvious one there, but it's always somebody else that they're moving along. But lightning in a bottle type short-term investment. Sure, if he's going to run, but I honestly forgot he was in the league.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was even in the league.
I think I tried to write him off after being burned in 2020 and 2021. I'm like, nope, you're gone. Bye.
I will point out too that he's probably only going to play against lefties, and the Cardinals only go up against one lefty this week, and that's Brandon Williamson. So I don't know that he's going to get very much playing time unless he comes in as a. If you saw that, he's hitting 400 and stealing bases right now, I think you're probably going to be pretty disappointed if you're expecting him to steal a whole bunch more this week with only one game against the lefties. So next guy on the docket is Mark Vientos, who is a really interesting prospect for the Mets. He's come up and made his major league debut and hit a home run already. Jason, any interest in Mark Vientos?
I like Mark Vientos. I've seen him played live a few times here in the minors. He hits the ball extremely hard. He's got a lot of raw power, and he's not a stiff running either. The problem is I would say like he hits the ball hard, but there's the usual risk that you have with that type of approach. He can be prone to some swing and miss in his game, but he does have a lot of thump in his bat. He's somebody I'd like to see where the Mets are going to make room for him in there, but he does have some good power upside. If you're one of those teams that's chasing power, this is a guy to look at because he does have it in spades, but it does come with some risk. Batting average could be a problem, but he can put some serious thump in a baseball.
Sarah, any interest in Vientos?
I really like Vientos, and I agree with everything that Jason just said. I was looking at him for the Playing Time Tomorrow column, and his first game he came up, he had 4 batted ball events. One of them was 99.6 miles per hour. The other 3 were all over 100 miles per hour, including a home run. He did the same thing in his second game, just like mashing balls over 100 miles per hour. And also, between his first and second game, for some reason, he sat for Daniel Vogelbach and Eduardo Escobar. And so I'm not sure what the Mets are doing, calling this kid up so that he can sit against lefties and we can watch Daniel Vogelbach play. He's also, I worry about playing time here, but the power potential is real. I have to believe that he is going to play himself into an everyday role with the Mets. I just don't know how long that's going to take. And I think there could be some playing time concerns for a few weeks while he figures that out.
Well, and the problem is it's not sitting against lefties; it's sitting against righties. Both the games he sat this week,
yes,
right-handed pitching, and there is a ton of power in the bat. Why is Daniel Vogelbach still on this team? Like, I understand, like he's
they're waiting for that stolen base.
Yeah, I don't get it. He's hitting 236. He's not hitting for a bunch of power. He's got 2 home runs in over 100 plate appearances this year. Get him off your team and bring some of these young, interesting guys up and give other guys playing time that are already up. I don't know. I think Vientos is an interesting guy to take a gamble on because there is just a ton of power. But like Jason said, there's a lot of swing and miss in this. So he's a guy that could strike out at a 35% rate at the major league level. Could come with a bunch of power, but will the Mets be okay with him striking out of that rate? At least he walks. He's had double-digit walk rates in the minor leagues. So those of you playing on-base percentage leagues, maybe the average doesn't kill you because he does walk at a double-digit rate. So we're going to finish out with a giant in Patrick Bailey, former first-round pick. He's coming up because Joey Bart hit the IL again this season. Any interest in Patrick Bailey there, Sarah?
I'm really concerned about playing time here. I'll keep an eye on Bailey. I am not in on Bailey at the moment, but if you are desperate at catcher, definitely somebody you could throw $1 on and just see what you've got there. I'm probably a little bit more interested in Chad Wallach if he got dropped from his concussion issues because he has more steady playing time, has already put up some decent numbers there for the Angels, covering for Logan O'Hoppe, who unfortunately we lost early this season. I don't know. I could see throwing $1 on him, but I'm not really all that interested, except maybe in the deepest of leagues or an NL only league.
What about you, Jason?
NL only league. I mean, he's got the prospect pedigree, switch hitter, cool, but it's a catcher. I mean, I'm not chasing. I'm not chasing in a mixed format. There are other options. I think that this year is one of those years. There's only one team I have. I have Yanir Diaz as a catcher in AL. I actually did try to replace him this week, and I got outbid on both Christian Vasquez and Matt Thaiss, who both had been hit on the waiver wire for some reason. So I lost on a tiebreaker with Vasquez, and underbid, or I was overbid rather on Matt Tice. But other than that, I've been pretty good at catcher this year, and I don't see how this fixes any of my issues. So no, if I'm going to bid, it may be $1 or $2, but other than that, it's I don't know what else to say. It's a catcher.
And I mean, here's the problem, because I like Patrick Bailey long term. Like, I think he's a really interesting prospect, good hit tool for a catcher, and a very good defender behind the plate. The problem is this is just a grade 1 groin strain for Joey Bart, which means he's probably not going to be out for very long. And the Giants have Blake Sabol as a Rule 5 pick, which means he has to stay up with the Major League club, and they don't want to lose him. And so they were running at one point with 3 catchers because they didn't want to lose him. So I don't think they're going to run with 3 catchers for very long once Joey Bart comes back. So my assumption is that this is a short-term stay unless Patrick Bailey just starts hitting the cover off the ball, because Bart has actually been halfway decent this year. So if you're looking for a short-term catcher stream, because I do think Bailey's going to play quite a bit behind the plate until Bart comes back, then that makes sense. But if you are looking at him as a long-term replacement, look somewhere else. So that is going to wrap us up for this episode. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a blast talking a little bit of this weekend's FAAB and some fantasy baseball with both of you.
Remind everybody where you reach on social media, and then plug all your work.
You can find me at @BCB_Sarah. I share everything that I write there. And the most important thing that I'd love people to take a look at right now is the new fantasy baseball show that I've got going. It drops early each week, usually Monday or Tuesday. You can subscribe to that by searching for Fans First Sports Network Fantasy. It's called What the FAAB. And Justin has been on. I will certainly have Jason on later this season. And it's just been a blast talking through some of the early FAAB market movement, draft recaps, different things that have been going on this year with lots of our favorite fantasy friends. So check it out.
Definitely got to check it out. I had an absolute blast on there a couple weeks ago and had an absolute blast talking to you today on this pod. Jason, where can you be reached on social media, and what are you doing right now?
So at Jason Collette, weekly column at RotoWire. Collect Calls usually runs Thursday or Friday, depending on what my weekly schedule is. And so this week was one on RBIs, looking at where RBIs are coming from, because that as a whole league average, 14.4% of runs are driven in. And there are some guys like Jonah Heim who are driving in 30% of their base runners. And there are guys like Gunnar Henderson who are driving in like 4. So it's like you have to look at, I like trying to look for those guys that are below league average, because you have to figure that comes up. So what can I do to acquire some of those guys? Or if my RBI production looking like, wow, I've got Jonah Heim, that's not going to last for long. But Texas has been absurd in their offense. It's like everybody was kind of focused on my team. But now, like recently, people are starting to notice, holy crap, Texas scores a bunch of runs. They also give up a bunch. Their bullpen situation is not great, but they're doing some things over there as well, and that's why Adolis Garcia leads the league in RBIs this year. So I was working on that, and topic to be determined for this week. Haven't really come up with that yet. Are we recording next week with it being Memorial Day weekend?
I will, if you will.
Okay, I'm good. Just want to make sure.
All right. Yeah, we'll definitely record then. You can reach me on Twitter at Mason FWFB. I'm writing daily at Fangraphs, 3 days a week at Fantasy Pros, and I'm also doing the Friends of Fantasy Benefits podcast. That will wrap us up for this episode. For Sarah, Jason, and myself, thank you for listening. Have a fantastic baseball season.